Hi there, and welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, a show where my dad and I sit down and we talk about fantasy books. I'm the son here, Zach.
And that makes me the father, Jim. Great to have you listening today. Zach, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's a little bit rainy outside, so I went and got some coffee for today's recording. While I was out there, saw something kind of funny. Well, morbidly funny.
Oh, no.
So there was a car crash a little bit. Not one I saw happen, but
Yeah, where's the funny coming in?
between when I drove one direction and when I drove the other, it must have happened during that time. The funny part is it happened right on the corner where there is a fire station, but there weren't any responders yet. So I'm sitting here going, literally people inside must have seen it happen, but no first responders yet.
Nobody's called us yet.
Exactly. It had to have just been nobody called yet.
That's a sad kind of funny. I'm still wondering about my son's sense of humor. I saw something funny. Yeah, there was a car accident. Oh, sheesh.
I mean,
If anybody's new to this is their first episode, they're like, wow, this dude's twisted.
Hey.
I think I'll keep listening.
as long as we aren't a train wreck, it's fine for car crashes.
Okay, I guess.
Not really. Anyways, how are you?
I am also doing dandy. I am not drinking coffee. In fact, I'm not sure that counts, that you can just drink coffee.
Sure I can. If you have any problem with it, I have something we could put in it, but I'm okay for now.
Okay, I should not pressure you to be drinking, I suppose. That's...
My dad encourages alcoholism? No.
I, however, am drinking. I've got for me today a Tokyo tea. This is the recipe of the episode that I'll be putting on Instagram and sharing with you all. It's not that much different from a Long Island iced tea.
It's prettier.
Yeah, it is pretty. There's a little less alcohol in it. A lot of the same ones, but the quantities are a little smaller.
What's it get the green from? Midori?
Midori, that's right. It's quite yummy. I recommend it to anyone. Okay, this is going to be a really epic episode this time.
It is. It's the penultimate episode of The Eye of the World.
He goes with that word again. Penultimate. Not quite ending. Okay.
I still can't believe you didn't know what that word meant.
Anyways, this is the episode where the action is. It's good stuff next episode for sure, and we're going to have fun wrapping everything up, but this is where it's at. Are you ready for this?
Probably not, but we'll see.
One announcement before we move into this week's excellent content. Next week will be our final episode for this first book, book one of the epic Wheel of Time series. In honor of this milestone, we're inviting any and all of our fans to join us for the live recording. Normally, this is open only to our Feist tier patrons and above, but for this special episode, as we celebrate wrapping up the first book, we just want to welcome everyone in.
Yeah, so if you've got time, come enjoy, interact with us on Discord as we cover the final two chapters and then just the book in general.
Yep, we'll be talking about what it's meant, what we really like and wished was better from the first book, and then kind of talking about what we're looking forward to as we move ahead. And depending on who's with us, interacting through the live chat, it may take us down some rabbit holes.
Who knows?
That could be fun. Now, there's kind of a funny thing about this. We started promoting that this live recording will be open to all. Just this weekend, started to promote it. But if the first you've heard about it is now, when you're listening, well, if you're one of our subscribers that has gotten this in their feed right away Sunday morning, that means it's this afternoon that the live recording is happening. So you still have a chance to get onto our Discord and join us. And of course, the Discord invite link is in our show notes as always. But if you're listening to this later on the binge or something, sorry, it's dated. But we still do have live recordings all the time for our Patreon. So that link is also in our show notes where you can explore our Patreon page and see if you'd like to become a regular participator and subscriber through Patreon. Really go next level with our podcast.
But if you do catch this at the right time to be able to just hop in, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday, March 21st.
2021.
Sure. We'd love to see you there.
Thanks. All right, with that out of the way, it is time to get to the content.
Let's get into it.
We begin with Chapter 48, The Blight.
Dun, 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 dun. It's almost like we planned it.
Almost. We didn't, actually. As the chapter opens, our company is approaching Shinar's northern border.
Oh, still can't get over that.
Shinar.
Shinar rather than
not
Shinar.
Shinara.
Not Shinar.
Shinar.
No, Shinar.
That's right.
You're right. It just feels wrong.
They look ahead, they see the shiny Shinarans in their armor blazing in the sun. It's great.
Speaking of, accompanying them is Ingtar and 100 lances that Lord Agomar sent to get them safely to that point, the spot of the Blight.
The border is guarded well. There's fortified towers about every half mile as they look to the east and the west. They're not manned as much as usual because the rest of the army has all gone off to Tarwin's Gap now. They left at the same time that this group headed north to the border with Ingtar and his 100 troops.
Now, I'm going to infer something a little bit here about the state of the borderlands, what it looks like. We know it's the northern mountainous region. It's cold. It's a little more desolate. But it's not all mountains.
No, they're not in mountains at all yet.
No, because I'm looking at this going, how would 100 lances be effective? You need open fields, wide, good terrain.
Yep.
So this land is maybe a little desolate, but not too terrible to travel.
Right. It's pretty wide open. I mean, there's trees and stuff in places, but it's not mountains.
No.
Those are ahead.
But the spread out openness is what I really want to highlight because it makes a huge contrast to what we're about to see.
You can actually guarantee that right where they're at is all open because I'm sure they've cleared all of the trees and stuff along the border.
They need to be able to see.
That's right. Wide open sight. Now, Ingtar, man, he's glad they're here now because he's just itching to be gone. This is to him felt like babysitting because here he is with these 100 lances to get them to the border, but forbidden to go further.
Meanwhile, a whole bunch of the rest of the men are going towards Tarwin's Gap, where there is a coming force of Trollocs, and he's not supposed to get there yet.
We've learned about Ingtar already. He's very caught up in his honor and wanting to earn honor and respect, and so to come this far with them and not be able to go into the Blight with them is like very disappointing, but doubly so because now he and his troops are going to turn around, hustle to Tarwin's Gap, and probably not make it in time for that battle either.
Both ways, it's kind of shoving in his face, hey, these great honorable ways, you could have even died, but died an honorable death. Yeah, you don't get to do either of those.
He's feeling pretty cheated.
Poor guy.
So, as soon as they're to the border, he and his men, they take off for the south. Lan, he leads north. We're going on. And honestly, the country they're traveling through doesn't look any different than
Not
the other side of the
initially,
border.
at least.
Nah. The water's pushing them hard, moving at as fast a walk as the horses can maintain. They're not galloping.
No, but it's a gentle trot.
They've got some miles to go, so you gotta, pace the horses as appropriate. They do start to notice, after not too much longer, that the temperature's starting to warm up, get a little more mild.
They don't need as much of their heavy cloaks or gear that they had prepped for the northern borderlands.
It's like, hey, maybe spring has finally come, but Nynaeve is sitting there with a puzzled look on her face. She's troubled, and she says, it feels wrong.
Could you say almost she's kind of reading the weather and feeling it's not quite right?
I'm thinking that's about it. Rand also can kind of feel something's wrong, but he can't really put his finger on why it feels that way. Traveling just a little further, the temperature keeps going up. Now it's not comfortable. Now it's getting sticky. And it is. The humidity is rising too. In fact, it gets so bad. Looking around, they would think they're in the middle of a bog, a swamp, a mire, but nope, the ground's still just like it was.
See, I always think of particularly bad summers of visiting grandparents in the Midwest.
That humidity.
And it just, you step outside and you feel like you're in a sauna.
And that's nothing compared to where I first lived fresh out of college with your mom down in New Orleans. Man, you could cut through the air. It was so thick. This is what they're starting to experience it, but even worse. And then they start noticing the plants beginning to change. The trees and bushes start having these black flecks on them and sickly yellow coverings spreading along the leaves. Lan reminds them, don't touch anything. Even the plants in the Blight can maim or kill. He says, you've got to be cautious now everywhere. As an example, to drive this home, he shares the story of the little thing called a stick. Zach, can you tell us about a stick?
He says that there's a little thing called a stick, likes to hide where the leaves are thickest, and looking like its name, waiting for something to touch it. And then it bites. Not poison, but a juice that begins to digest the stick's prey for it. And at that point, you just have to amputate.
Yeah, because you are now being digested alive.
But it doesn't bite unless you touch it. So that's terrifying. A
It's
tiny
just a
little
stick.
innocuous thing that you touch it and, oh, best chance, cut off your arm.
And then he's like, and there are things way worse than that.
Oh, yeah. That just attacks if you touch it. Almost everything else in the Blight?
Yeah.
No, they want to kill you.
Yeah, he says, now guys, you see how this is and how I'm warning you, we're only on the fringe. Okay, it's going to get a lot worse. He says the very worst of the Blight is located north of the Mountains of Doom, where they're headed. Now, Mountains of Doom. DHOOM. Really?
That being said, I kind of appreciate it as a Tolkien nod.
Oh, it's totally a Tolkien nod. It's practically a Tolkien ripoff. But no, let's define the difference. Nod and ripoff. A ripoff, someone is just blatantly plagiarizing, practically. When he does something like this, he throws in an H. He's making it his own, but he knows everybody's reading, knows, oh, you mean, yeah, Mountains of Doom, like Mount Doom. Yeah. That's clever.
To
That's
me,
cute.
it has less the spelling that is the difference here, but the relative importance.
Yeah.
Mount Doom is the focal point of the final moments of mass conflict.
What? It wasn't the big glowing eye sitting on top of a tower?
Nah. But the Mountains of Doom, they're there, but they're never really going to be too vital in and of themselves.
Spoilers?
I mean, we're spoilers light. We tell people what to watch out for. This is one you don't have to worry about too much.
But we know they're heading there.
True.
All right. Continuing on. The plants grow more and more sickly, but with it now a smell comes. It's starting to smell like rot. Things are spoiling, all decaying. In fact, it gets so bad, Matt upchucks.
Yeah?
Yeah, really bad.
I mean, it's fair. It's disgusting.
And you know when somebody with you throws up,
then there's sympathy puke.
You have an impulse. Yeah, everybody else, just about everybody else, has the same look on their face. They all manage to hold it in.
I just have to imagine how bad Loyal feels seeing all this. Because these are plants, twisted and wrong, and as an Ogier, that's got to be terrible.
Absolutely. The heat only eases once the sun finally drops below the horizon. And then it's like a thermostat switch. Just bam! Everything's icy cold.
Mm-hmm. It's very strange because while it seems pretty well foliated, is that even a word? It's well covered with foliage, even if it is a gross thing. But the temperature swings we get are what we would expect out of a desert.
Mm-hmm. Their goal, as we've said, is to reach the Mountains of Doom. They got to get, honestly, beyond the Mountains of Doom. They cannot make it before dark, so with the sun down now, it's time to look for a place to set up a camp. And Moraine and Lan have an idea of where to go.
Yeah.
As they're heading there, there's a conversation about the exact location, then, of the Eye of the World. Just where are we heading?
Apparently, it's complicated.
Yeah, Moraine knows where she found it, but Loyal, he knows of many Ogier who have been there, and he mentions that actually everyone that he's talked to found it in a slightly different place. All kind of just the other side of the Mountains of Doom, but not in the same location.
So while this is a fixed place, it is not fixed within the world exactly?
So basically they have to go over there and search until they find it. They're heading to where Moraine found it, but if they don't find it there, then they'll wander, and they're going to trust that because of their need, the eye will reveal itself.
More or less, it will come to them.
And the rest of them are like, great.
Yeah, we could go wandering around in this Blight for ages and never find anything until we die.
They reach their destination, which turns out to be the outskirts of Lan's original home, the capital of Malkir.
Welcome home, buddy.
Yeah, they see 7 broken towers visible in the distance, circled by lakes and hills.
It probably once was very picturesque.
Absolutely. Matt, in fact, is like, dang, lakes. Let's go camp down there, maybe take a dip. At which point they see some Loch Ness monster type creature move around and do something down there.
Jordan's really coming in really strong with the Tolkien references this chapter.
Yeah, I was totally like, oh, mine's the Moria entrance. Yeah. Oh, there's something in the lake. And Matt's like, you know, on second thought, this place is fine.
Let's
stay right here. Moraine then uses the one power to set a minor ward. She notes, I can't do anything too big. It would attract the Dark One's eye. But I can do something. And what she does is pretty cool. She basically creates a bubble of air that bends the light. Mm-hmm. And then she walks into it and she's gone. They can't see her. She's disappeared.
It's a fun trick that has some scientific basis on what we kind of theorize technology for invisibility would be. You take what you have in front of you and project into it what you have actually behind you. So instead of looking at you, they just look at you and see what's behind you.
Speaking of invisibility, did you ever see the most recent Invisible Man?
I saw like 2 minutes of it while you were watching it.
Yeah, we need to watch it together. That is a cool movie.
We'll get to it, maybe.
I loved it. It was great.
Not tonight.
No, not tonight. Someone has some D&D to move on to later. And that's not me, though I have played in my day. Yes. So they all move inside this bubble. Once you're inside it, you can see around everywhere. Everything's perfect, but nobody can see you inside. And the chapter ends. They're all settling down. They're going to sleep. Rand, he's not able to drift off easily. As he's laying there, he overhears Nynaeve and Lan having a conversation. What's that about?
At least from Rand's view, it's a little bit out of place because he hasn't seen everything we've seen. Nynaeve more or less is like, yo, Lan, maybe I'm into you and we should do something about that. And
she hints pretty heavily, I could marry you, dude.
Yeah, Lan says he can't do that. He's married to his fight.
Now hold on. Before he just says he can't, he acknowledges he feels the same way.
Yeah. I mean,
as much as Lan can. He
does that horrible thing where it's like, I would be with you, but I'd die and it would be so bad for you, so I can't do that.
Yep, I cannot leave you a widow. You deserve so much better.
That horrible moment when characters, and it's almost become a trope in and of itself, they feel like their own duty is so heavy that they...
You said duty.
No, but it's like heavy as a mountain, if you will.
I know, as being a child.
And I'm the kid here, comparatively. That they just feel like they aren't allowed to have fun or have good things in life. It's not cool.
Lan leaves then to check on the horses. Nynaeve is left in tears. Rand wisely pretends he never heard a thing. I don't think she would have appreciated that being overheard.
Nah, play the Jon Snow card, bud. You
I
know
nothing. Chapter 49. The Dark One stirs. Starts with dawn and the return of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
They break camp, and Moiraine takes a moment to silently remove the traces of what she did with the One Power to protect them last night. Now, just looking at it, all they see is her standing there silently. Nothing seems to happen. Although Egwene and Nynaeve suddenly look cold, rubbing their arms, and kind of smiling at each other. The rest of them only know what's going on because Moiraine tells them what she's doing. Zach, what do you think is actually happening here? What was Moiraine doing to remove all traces of their presence overnight?
See, most of the time, I would think that an Aes Sedai would just be saying, untying the knots in their weaves, letting things dissipate, whatever. But Moiraine does strike me as someone who's a little more willing to take a risk when she feels it's necessary. So I would buy she's straight up unweaving what she put in there.
I think so.
Which, while Egwene and Nynaeve are very untrained, they may or may not have a slight sense that this could blow up in their faces literally.
We haven't talked about unweaving on our regular podcast.
No.
We do have a special episode, the last one in our feed, which was a midweek special on magic systems, talking about Wheel of Time.
A little more spoiler heavy, but not too bad.
And if you want to know more about unweaving, we talk all about that there. But yeah, she's clearly doing something that takes some attention, that's more than just letting magic fade away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As they continue on, the blight continues to get worse. Matt notes now that the plant life looks like it practically wants to reach out and grab us.
Little shop of horrors.
Nice. Feed me, Seymour. Although it was more like, feed me, Seymour. Okay.
All of the above.
Moiraine responds to Matt. Some of them actually do want to reach out and grab you. But don't worry, my presence protects us.
The age-old Moiraine will save us.
Rand is thinking of how ridiculous it would be, a tree actually, moving and grabbing at them. When he sees a tree off to the left actually tremble, then whip about, bend down, grab something from the ground. Something that screams and writhes, and I'm like, it's a Harry Potter Whomping Willow!
Yeah. I love it.
Totally. Clearly the tree did catch something. That is not cool. Lan, they all notice that.
It's fine though, probably. Both those things were probably nasty things.
Lan responds to this by drawing his sword and just urging them all to keep moving. Moiraine warns them all to stay as close to her as they can. Again, her connection to the true source is protection from these things. But then things get really intense. The blight seems to come to life around them, and threats rise up to attack. First, it's a nearby creature, and Lan darts off to the side and deals with it.
Slice, we good.
Then, another creature actually charges the group, and this is faster than Lan can handle.
Oh yeah, he's still back on the other one.
So it attacks and kills them all.
No. Thank goodness. Quick thinking, quick hands, Matt. Pops out an arrow. Whoosh,
Down it goes.
Two Rivers folk and their bows.
Lan's like, good shooting. Moraine is shocked that the Blight would actually strike out at them physically when she's holding the true source, touching the true source, and encourages them, okay, Mufasa! They've got to get to the mountains. Then the trees and all the creatures seem to attack all at once.
Yeah.
We're done piecemeal now.
It's a mess. Things are going crazy. There are attacks on all sides. Everyone's having to take part to try and do something, and as best they can, as soon as possible, they're going to have to be getting out of there.
Yeah, they are forcing their way through, striking things down and out of their way. We're talking tree branches and creatures, and everything's battling them. And then there's a really shrill cry in the distance, and everything goes still and then backs away. And they're left, alone. And then they hear more of
There's always a bigger fish.
These shrill cries, multiple ones. Yes, a bigger fish. Nice Star Wars reference. And Lan's like, those are worms. One of the worst things that we could be up against here. We gotta go. We gotta ride hard, ride fast now. Matt's like, worms? Really? Worms?
Yes, worms.
It's like, these are not your Two Rivers worms.
No, they're not small. They're not...
Whatever this is, it's something that can kill a fade.
Yeah.
And they have a pack, by the sound of it, on their trail. Now here, I had two different other series, both sci-fi, that popped to mind here.
Okay.
I'm thinking of Dune. You got the sandworms in Dune.
Understood.
And then you got Tremors. You know, have you seen the movie Tremors?
All the sequel... The sequels get kind of ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, they go off the
But
rails,
it's funny, and those are really enjoyable, and I feel like a decent representation of especially maybe younger ones.
But either thing, you got these underground things, perhaps. Maybe they're on top of the ground. I don't know, but they're coming at them. They're worms, and they're going to mess you up. So just like in Dune, and just like in Tremors, but more in Dune, if they can get to rock, they'll be safe. So I'm thinking these are burrowing things still that then will burst up and eat you.
I do believe...
I gotta get to the mountains.
And we can potentially cut this out if it's too spoilery. I have not read River of Souls, but I believe there is a depiction of one of these worms in it that gives a lot more detail about one of these creatures at some point.
That wasn't too spoilery. But we'll mention now, we're going to cover all 15 books in the series. But there are a couple of short stories that were written to be included somewhere in the final 3 books, but then got edited out before publication. But they're still out there that you can read, and one of them, and we won't tell more about it, because that would be too spoilery, but one of them shares more about a worm, what it can go on to do.
And I'll read that eventually.
Anyways, they charge along with these worms in pursuit. Now they're galloping all out in what feels like a hopeless struggle to make it to the mountains, because those are still way off.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, Lan's certain they're going to be overtaken. I mean, they're not slowing down. They're talking as they go, but he's like, Moraine, I should just fall back and hold them off to give you guys more time, which basically would be a death sentence.
Yeah, it's like, I will suicide to buy you the extra minute or two that probably won't make a difference anyways, because you probably won't make it.
And Moraine's like, no, we need you. Let's go. And then suddenly, it's not hopeless anymore.
Something's different.
I don't know what that's from.
It's from a musical, but I don't think you know it.
Okay. Would our listeners know it?
Probably not. If you happen to be from Newfoundland, you may know the story of Come From Away. It's a very great musical, and I recommend it.
So if you know that musical, hit us up on social media or Discord to tell us. Yes, because I know at least one person I've talked to recently in WAP fandom lives in Newfoundland. So, yeah, hey. From one moment to the next, everything changed. The Blight is just gone.
Suddenly, plants are actually okay again. We've got green leaves, healthy trees. That was a mess of things to say.
Healthy trees, yeah. Healthy trees, butterflies, birds, bees, sweet smells, a gentle breeze, pleasant temperature. It's all wonderful. They come to a shocked halt, and Moraine announces, we've reached safety.
It's the Green Man's place.
This is where the Eye of the World is.
So no blight can enter.
And they're all like, wait a second. It's supposed to be
On the
far
other side of the mountains?
mountains. How can this be?
I mean, Moraine gets to have a little bit of an I told you so moment of just going, need.
And then they hear a voice. This place is always where it is. All that changes is where those who need it are.
Because that's not cryptic at all.
And then they see the speaker, a man-shaped figure stepping out of the trees.
Treebeard?
He's as much larger than Loyal as Loyal is larger than Rand. So this guy's up there, 13, 14 feet tall.
At least.
It's the Green Man. What is the Green Man, Zach? You said Treebeard. You're giving us another Lord of the Rings reference, but he's not Treebeard.
No, I always think of him as more a creature that is a composite of sentientness. He has like a consciousness that is there, but he's a composite of weird amalgamation of plants that create a body that is true and there, and he is a real creature, but you look at him and you can't tell exactly where what's person and what's plant, but it all is there. It's the embodiment of forestness in a humanoid shape.
Even his eyes, they're nuts. Hazelnuts for eyes. Yeah, he's just this plant life thing, but he can talk.
He speaks for the trees, like the Lorax, but he's much taller.
The Green Man shares a little foreshadowing and lore in how he welcomes various members of the party. To Loyal, he says, "Welcome, little brother," and speaks of singing tree songs together, remembering the great trees and holding the longing at bay.
So at the very least, the Green Man, or whatever he is, shares some kinship to Ogier.
He recognizes and names Perrin as a wolf brother, asking if the old times truly walk again now.
Which tells me he's really, really, really old.
Perrin is not at all comfortable being called wolf brother.
Not really.
And when turning to Rand, he calls him a child of the dragon and references the odd clothes he's wearing. He asks if the people of the dragon are returning to the First Covenant. Oh, but then he sees Rand's wearing a sword and he's just confused.
And I could talk about this, but I really can't without too many spoilers until later books.
But we want to highlight their significance there.
In everything that was just said.
Yes, and you're going to learn more about all of those things as we move forward. But the point that he says these things, he sees stuff that we don't know yet because he has ancient knowledge.
He is cognizant of who or what these various people are in ways that they don't know themselves.
Right. The Green Man has a large scar on his head, which appears to be impacting his memories and focus. He acknowledges he's been having some struggles. He notes his surprise that Moraine was able to return, and she comments on their great need. That's how it happened, the world's need. And his response is quotable.
"Then it has come again. That memory remains whole. The Dark One stirs, I have feared it. Every turning of years, the Blight strives harder to come inside. And this turn, the struggle to keep it out, has been greater than ever since the beginning. Come, I will take you."
End of chapter.
Now, when he says the beginning, you think he's talking the beginning of the entire Wheel of Time?
No.
Or just a beginning?
His beginning. The beginning of this stuff.
That's what I was kind of going. But it is ambiguous enough to leave question.
Chapter 50 is named Meetings at the Eye.
Woo!
The Green Man leads them further within this oasis within the Blight. Rand is in awe. I mean, the Green Man has been a legend he's learned about since childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Him and the Tree of Life. They're in stories that they were told as kids. To be here, really in his presence, is surreal. His step is lighter. He can't help feeling a little more upbeat. He's walking with a living legend. As they follow him, everyone seems to be a little more uplifted, except Perrin, who's kind of dogging it. See what I did there? Dogging it in the back.
You made a big difference about wolves and dogs the other day.
Yeah, but I can't say he's wolving it. That doesn't fly.
I mean, you totally could. I'm just saying, if you want to argue that they're so remotely different in this world, then you can't use synonyms for them.
So why is he hanging back, wolving it, looking troubled, Zach? What's going on in his mind?
He's getting actively reminded of the inevitability of his wolf brotherness. And so that's something he doesn't want to accept.
Yeah, he's really conflicted over being this connection with wolves and what it may mean for his future.
He tried to kind of shut it out and leave it, and he hasn't really had to deal with it for at least a few chapters. Probably around 15 chapters at this point, he hasn't really had to deal with this.
And now it's back!
Yeah, and just slapped in the face as soon as you meet this new character. Hey, wolf brother.
Yep.
Doesn't ask his name and immediately just knows he's a wolf brother.
The Green Man leads them to an arched opening at the side of a hill. At the keystone of the arch, you know what a keystone is?
It's the top kind of
Wedged
wedge.
piece.
Yeah, I'm making a shape with my hands.
That's how
but
I'm
I
helping
couldn't
you
think
because you
the
can't see
word.
his hands.
That serves to bear equal weight from both sides and support the arch in and of itself. And it's part of what gives the strength of that structure.
So this is dead center up at the top.
I studied Roman aqueducts a little.
That's very good. And they can see on this keystone the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai. What does that look like, Zach?
For our modern listeners, it's more or less a yin-yang symbol.
But reversed. There's quite a bit of discussion on that in Watt fandom.
Of just like the sides are reversed, or it's
Yeah,
up and
the
down
way it
rather
normally
than
would be
side.
done is they're
Inverted.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's not a direct yin-yang ripoff.
But it's heavily
flipped
inspired.
it.
It's heavily inspired, or if we believe in the idea of the wheel, inspired by and inspires that symbol.
But now if you look at it more closely, it's really two different things that we've seen referenced.
We have. It's the flame of Tarvalon.
That's
which
the white part.
is white, is connected to Aes Sedai now, and we first, I believe, saw on the silver Tarvalon marks.
Correct. And then the black part
Is what is now called the Dragon's Fang. Something that in the world that we see around seems to connotate dark friends and evil shadow.
Remember the white cloaks threatening to do that to Basil
Exactly.
Gills in, put a dark... And it happened in Emmons Field.
It happened places. People scrawl it on, and sometimes all it takes is putting the Dragon's Fang on someone's doorstep, and that building gets burned down.
But you put these two together, makes a circle, half white, half black, and it's the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai. So it's right there over this archway. This is what they've come for. Before they can enter, Matt speaks up, asking if they could see the Tree of Life first, an indication he's heard the same stories that Rand heard as a kid. Probably all the kids in the Two Rivers heard about these things. The Green Man gives Rand an odd look. That's foreshadowing. And says, Avendasora isn't here, and I haven't seen it in 2,000 years.
So I want to pause for just a sec, go back a moment. Ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai.
We haven't talked about that enough yet.
No, is that something that I can talk about more with my frustrations with it now, or just hint that I have frustrations with it?
That depends on the level of spoilage, as always.
I'm probably just going to let rest here and say I have some serious frustrations
It's interesting.
with the idea of what it looks like and symbolizes based in when it came about.
Okay.
And these are things that I will talk about at a later date, so as to not spoil too much.
I will look forward to it because I really like the symbol and the way Robert Jordan used this.
There's just like a singular choice in and of it that I'm like, but why? And it's frustrating.
Okay.
Anyways.
Moraine gestured to the arch, saying, the Tree of Life isn't what we've come for. What's in there is. Okay, lore dump moment. The Green Man will not accompany them through the arch. He shares that being too close to what's inside makes him uncomfortable. He was set to guard it.
But he knows that his end is linked to it.
Yeah, so proximity makes him uneasy.
It's like if you get told you're going to die in a car crash, you'd be very nervous to be around cars.
It was made in the first days of the breaking of the world.
Loosely 3,000 years ago.
Yeah. 100 men and women, Aes Sedai, joined together to make it, joining Saidin and Saidar, as was always done for the greatest of works. So it wasn't 50-50.
No, but it also was more than 72.
Right.
So there's some notable things in there that's... We don't know exactly what they did or how.
And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Whatever it is, all 100 of these Aes Sedai, in working together to create the Eye of the World, died, making it a pure thing that they wanted to leave behind them. And before dying, they set the Green Man to guard it until the time it would be needed. Because they knew a time would come. And that's all he's known. He's here to guard it until it's needed.
He doesn't really know what for.
With that, the rest of them do enter. Inside is a large, polished stone corridor that leads to a vast, domed space with a pool in the center in the oval shape of an eye. The water of the pool seems perfectly clear.
And yet, they can't see any bottom. It's one of those bottomless pit moments, except instead of a bottomless pit of dark, it's just a bottomless pit of clearness.
Kind of magical. This is the Eye of the World. This literally is the Eye of the World. The Emmons Field Company are puzzled at, okay, what really is it? And Moraine explains it's not water.
Nope.
It is the pure essence of Sidene, the male half of the true source. This pool is untainted Sidene, the power men drew on before the breaking of the world, and Sidene was tainted by the Dark One. Everyone backs away because when they hear about the men touching
Men channeling,
the source,
it's bad. There's madness, breaking of the world, all that.
yeah, it's bad. But no, this is pure.
And not only is it pure, it's the pure essence. So it's kind of like a distilled version.
Loyal speaks up, asking why those 100-Eye Sedai created this. And this is where Moraine acknowledges no one living any longer knows why.
Nope. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows how it was done. We can't do it again.
We only know that it would be needed one day at a time of the world's greatest and most desperate need.
And apparently they know enough to know vaguely what it was. Because she knew what this was before coming here, clearly.
And she's been here before. She's seen this before. Rand speaks up, why did you bring us here?
Well, because you're Ta'veren. Of course.
That's her answer.
Uh-huh.
They're here also because this is where the Dark One's power will strike. They've had all these signs, and it must be stopped. So they are here to stop whatever's going to happen.
And then we have, right on cue, you speak the devil, and he shall appear.
Yeah, there's nothing else they can do right there at the moment, so they go back outside, and they hear a voice. I have found you at last. Two men in dark cloaks walk out of the trees, hoods hiding their faces. Lan immediately asks, who are you, and how did you come here? They point at Matt.
Great.
Saying he guided us. An old thing, an old friend, an old enemy. But he is not the one we seek. Okay, what the heck? Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea what they were talking about when you read this the first time?
I suspected.
Did you?
That, and this may or may not be the truth, but I will say it anyways so that if you are a first-time reader, know this is what I was thinking initially. I suspected it had something to do with the issues that we had seen within Matt. We'd seen that there was some dark force, and we were told earlier when Moraine kind of was trying to fix him that he was working as a magnet for evil. That's why they had so much problems on the road. So my thought process was, maybe he's still a magnet for evil, it's just not impacting him.
Could be. There was also the thing with Matt where the old tongue would come out at times. So there's something weird about him that he kind of channels the old language that he never learned. Maybe it was connected to that. But of course, we also have to acknowledge he's still carrying a dagger.
Yep. Nice shiny ruby.
So it could be the dagger itself that is what they're sensing. And when we talk about the dagger, that takes us back to Shadar Logoth. And we will, over the course of the series, learn more about Shadar Logoth.
We will keep coming back to some of this.
So we're not going to go too deep here, but there's some true significance about Shadar Logoth, where when these guys say an old friend, an old enemy, both are true.
And I personally have some theories, or at least ways that I think the place itself is rather poetic, that I think when we've reached a point where we know enough, it'd be good, in my opinion, just to do an episode talking about that place.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Do a deep dive on Shadar Logoth.
Because I really like it. It's one of my favorite locations, both in its physical representation and its lore.
Might make a good midweek special.
Maybe.
Moraine demands they reveal who they are, and the two men push back their hoods. You haven't been able to see their faces yet. The one who's been speaking appears as an incredibly, inconceivably old man.
Inconceivable.
Skin as withered parchment pulled tight over a skull.
Ew.
Yeah, please tell me, people, you know where that quote was from that Zach did. Because, come on, you gotta know, right? You gotta know. I actually played that movie for my mom 3 years ago. She'd never heard
seen
of
it?
Never seen it, never heard of it. I'm like,
How?
I grew up in that household.
I mean, she's on
You're
the
cool,
internet. She's
Mom.
on the internet. She should know that.
She loves fantasy and stuff. I think she listens to our podcast.
Hi, Grandma.
How did she never come across The Princess Bride? She loved it. She almost fell asleep at one point, but it's the age. It happens. It happens. But she did not fall asleep. She made it to the end. But I think I did enjoy it more than she did. Anyways, this guy is really, really old. Looks really, really old. How are you still moving old? But the other guy is worse. He's so whatever that he's wearing a big black leather head covering.
It's a full BDSM leather hood.
It is. Okay, thank you for going there.
I mean, we aren't that kind of podcast, but we can be that kind of podcast for a moment here.
And gloves. I mean, you can't see any skin at all. And he doesn't talk. The implication is he's so deteriorated that no body part can be seen. It's just maybe the stuff's holding him together. And on this head mask thing, he has a face like painted or etched into it of a young, very handsome man laughing insanely. This guy's twisted, whatever this is. They announce they are Agenor and Balthamel.
I'm sorry, who? I've never heard of you guys.
Well, again, they clarify.
Yeah.
Of course, Moraine knows. Actually, they all know these names. They recognize the names right
At least
away.
vaguely.
These are two of the Forsaken. Aes Sedai from the Age of Legends who went over to the Dark One at the time of the War of the Shadow.
These are 2 of 13 specifically like high-ranked evil Aes Sedai.
Yeah, the 13 strongest, most powerful of the bad Aes Sedai.
And they were trapped in Sheo Ghul when it was sealed, along with the Dark One being sealed away.
The seals on the Dark One's prison are weakening.
And with it, some of these Forsaken clearly are free.
They reference that Shamael is also already free, and the rest will soon be free as well. Agenor and Balthamel were trapped, like the others, but only barely so, rather than being frozen in stasis as the other ones are. Now, it didn't say that they were frozen in stasis. I'm just throwing you a bone there, guys, okay?
Yeah.
The others didn't have what happened with these guys.
It's hinted.
They aged during their 3,000 years of captivity.
I believe it's described as them being ground against the wheel of time.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a poetic thing to see literally their bodies are being worn away by the time.
But they're okay with it. They're free now. And that means with the seals weakening, the Dark One will also soon be free. And he has the power to give them new bodies. Foreshadowing again.
Apparently that's a thing that can happen.
With this information shared, Agenor notes that now we know who we seek and we don't need the rest of you. That sounds kind of threatening. So Lan draws his sword.
We'll kill you now.
Now he draws his sword very quickly and then he hesitates for just a moment. The hesitation is, who does he go to protect? And his eyes betray him. It's like Moraine, as he's called, his warder, or Nynaeve, who he loves, and they're not standing anywhere next to each other.
Nope. I mean, they don't really like each other that much.
So the result is he draws his sword and then doesn't move.
And that slight bit of hesitation allows an opening.
Agenor just kind of flicks his hand, and Lan is thrown powerfully away, all the way over to the arch, slammed against it, and drops unconscious.
Which is unfortunate, because our resident badass is down for the count for right now.
Nynaeve seems not to like this.
Nope.
She shouts, "No!" and runs at the Forsaken with her knife.
Yes, because your little knife is going to do something.
This will help. Before she can strike, she's going for Agenor, who did that, but Balthamel, right next to him, just reaches out, grabs, this is so badass, grabs her face.
I'm sorry, what?
No, it seriously is. Just to picture this. Just reaches out, grabs her face. So thumb on one side, fingers on the other, and lifts her frickin' right off the ground. One hand, this decrepit thing just, and she's dangling in the air in front of him, convulsing, horribly in pain, screaming.
It's a monstrous display.
I'm not saying badass
power.
as the good thing. It's more badass
is typically a good thing.
Okay, apparently I don't speak millennial. It was, I don't know, it was really, whoa. So that sounded badass to me. So that's wrong.
I mean, no, the way you describe it, it really does seem like you think it's badass. I'm just sitting here being appalled that you are like almost uplifting
it's
and
a power
praising
move.
this
No,
display of power.
I'm not, but it's like, whoa, because he's just this decrepit thing ground against the wheel and suddenly,
It feels a little bit compensative. It's just like, we've seen they can flick of the
Are
wrist.
you saying I'm compensating?
No, he is. Balthamel.
Thank you.
Because they can just flick their wrist and send Lan flying, but he decides, no. I'm picking you up with one hand and making you feel this pain.
Well, and there's a reason.
I'm enjoying this.
Agenor comments, yes, the pleasures of the flesh. I haven't forgotten. So we get the point here. Balthamel enjoys physical contact and perhaps
He's an extreme sadist.
physical pain. So yeah, he's just holding her up. She's powerless. The dagger has dropped from her limp fingers, and she is just convulsing, twitching, and screaming.
At the very least, he's getting pleasure out of it, perhaps sexual.
Now, Egwene, she starts to move to help then. She's going to pull a Nynaeve, so Rand tackles her. Which is great. Just takes her down.
Yo, stop. Look, we just saw how effective that was. You want to do it too?
It's like, you women are not thinking. Perrin, axe in hand, Matt, dagger at the ready, both do a Nynaeve. They go charging at them, and Agenor smiles as they appear to run right smack into an invisible wall of air.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, there was a brick wall there that you didn't expect. That really hurt.
Yep, they're running hard, and they hit it hard, and they get knocked backwards on the ground, pretty much knocked silly. They get back up, staggering a little, shaky, and at the same time, Rand and Egwene do also get off the ground. Rand tries to help Egwene up. She's like, let me go.
Yeah.
All through this, Nynaeve continues to scream and convulse. Agenor taunts them that if they learn to properly worship him, he might let them live.
Great.
He references that as he has found what he needs, and he's gesturing towards the archway, perhaps he could now take some time to teach all of them how to properly worship.
And we get a new entrance.
The Green Man comes back.
Thank goodness.
And he says, "This shall not be! You do not belong here!" Agenor speaks dismissively to him.
Let's be real. They may or may not actually slightly belong here because apparently the place only allows people who need to be there to be there.
They have need?
So
Interesting. The Green Man stands firm, though. He says, "This is my place, and you shall hurt no living thing here."
Too late.
Balthamel tosses Nynaeve's limp body aside and lifts a hand at the Green Man, who then roars in pain as smoke begins to rise from the vines that make up his body. But then Balthamel is snatched up as vines shoot out from the Green Man and bring him into the Green Man's chest, crushing him there.
See, what's about to happen now, I describe as badass.
Because it's a good guy doing it.
Kind of.
Okay.
And it's something a little grotesque, but also a powerful and victorious move.
We said this is where the action is, these chapters. So here we go. Balthamel, he's being crushed against the Green Man's chest. He gets his arms free, reaches up, puts hands on either side of the Green Man's head, and flames come shooting out where his hands are.
Not good for plants.
Smoke comes out in more places, including out of the mouth of the screaming Green Man.
Oh,
Nasty.
poor guy. He just wanted to help.
But the Green Man doesn't stop.
Nope.
Balthamel then starts jerking and twitching and actually trying to get away, get out of the grip. And then what?
A little tiny bit of plant starts to break out of one of his gloves.
And that's just the beginning.
And then everywhere else and all these crazy things. And
fungus, lichens, mushrooms, just all bursting out of all spots around him.
And I like to imagine here, because Balthamel is the one covered in all these leather bits and pieces, that in some places it bursts through the seams, but in others it's just where it was connected, or the eye sockets of the mask, and it's suddenly he's now the pot, and the plants are sprouting from him.
But I appreciate it's not really mostly plants. It's mostly the kinds of stuff that grow on dead things.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's this dead creature who actually seems to still be moving using the one power. Well, now he's...
And to the credit, these fungi and very small root, more spreaders rather than ones that send them deep, these are the kinds of things that can survive really bad soil or come in when life is first returning to an area. So it's about the only thing that really makes sense would sprout out of this body.
The Green Man then throws Balthamel down to the ground, who jerks and twitches and then basically dissolves into a mound of mushrooms and fungus.
A shortcut.
He's done.
To mushrooms.
And then the Green Man falls to the ground, his head half charred and smoke continuing to rise from all over his body. He's dying. The last thing he does is he reaches out and grabs an acorn that was laying on the ground by him. And as his head drops to the ground in death, the acorn sprouts up and roots shoot out. And it just becomes this tremendous, massive oak tree, 500 years old in girth, that totally consumes what was the Green Man. And it's impressive.
It's a beautiful life and death moment.
Yeah.
But
Agenor
there's still another one, yeah.
He's like, his jaws hit the ground. What? His fellow Forsaken is dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, enough! It is past time to end this.
Enough playing around.
And Moraine, who we have not talked about all through this, she has just remained still and silent, now says, yes, Forsaken, pastime. And the ground beneath Agenor falls away and flames roar up and consume him.
And it doesn't actually work.
Moraine had been in the background, watching and waiting for her moment. This was her moment. She strikes, and he doesn't fall. He's like standing on air. And the flames?
I don't touch him.
Not at all. It's like a joke to him.
It's not great.
Seeing that, she turns to the others and says, "Run!"
Yeah.
And she keeps pouring the one power into Agenor, but he
It's just
starts
basically
walking towards her.
swatting little
on
bits of it out
air.
of the air as he doesn't seem to be on anything.
Loyal, Matt, Parent, they don't need to be told twice. They are out of there. They disappear into the trees. But when Rand turns to Egwene, she's just standing there with her eyes closed. What the heck is she doing?
Well, he figures out she's trying to do what Moraine's doing.
This little untrained girl barely can make flame to start a cook fire, is trying to, touch the one power and do her part. He shakes her out of it, says, "Run! Run!" She, a little miffed, but okay, and off she goes. She runs. But this draws Agenor's attention.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when he looks over, instead of continuing to go to Moraine, he changes direction and starts following Egwene.
Well, I mean, why worry about the one who is trying to do something when it's not really affecting you when you could cause more pain and hurt the one that clearly someone cares about?
That might be it. There might be another reason
Perhaps.
he goes after Egwene.
But to know that in that moment, I don't think so.
Probably not. That was a foreshadowing moment too, but we won't say anything more. Then we have this great moment where Rand attacks in the most effective possible way. He says, "Not her! The light burn you, not her!" Picks up a rock and throws it at him. All this stuff that Moraine has done, and he throws a rock at him. Now, he really wasn't trying to attack. He was trying to distract him.
Yeah.
And it works, because he looks at Rand, and in the meantime, Egwene disappears into the trees.
And so now he's coming at Rand.
Yeah, Rand can see in his eyes something that sparks. And he's like, oh, crap. Now he's coming for me.
So he starts to run.
And as he's running away, he hears Moraine start to scream.
End of
That's
chapter.
the end of the chapter. Now, and I've used this word a few times today, the epic conclusion of today's episode. Chapter 51, Against the Shadow.
Woo!
Rand rushes through the woods. Moraine, ominously, has stopped screaming.
Is it good? Is it bad? Probably not good.
Rand is sure Agenor's on his way. Probably will catch him in moments. Rand is scrambling as fast as he can. The direction he chose was up. There was an upward slope, and as he keeps going, it gets steeper and steeper, and he finally actually reaches the top of a hill, and there's a drop-off.
That's unfortunate.
About 100 feet straight down. There's not even a little goat trail or anything. There is no way down.
Yeah.
So he turns around. Guess who?
Hi Agenor.
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy?
Agenor's there, and he speaks. And what he says is worth repeating verbatim.
But Alzaman will give rewards beyond mortal dreaming for the one who brings you to Sheol Ghul. Yet my dreams have always been beyond those of other men, and I left mortality behind millennia ago. What difference if you serve the great Lord of the Dark alive or dead? None to the spread of the shadow. Why should I share power with you? Why should I bend knee to you? I who faced Luz Theron Telamon in the Hall of Servants itself. I who threw my might against the Lord of the Morning and met him, stroke for stroke. I think not. Notably, there was definitely a typo in that I had to get through.
Out of my notes, that was great. Less Theron Telamon. Oops, sorry, Luz. Okay, first time reading, that was a whole bunch of nonsense.
Oh yeah, no, none of it.
Made no sense at all. So I want to try to help our first time readers who are listening here have a little more information, understanding of what you just heard, but still basing it only on what we know in the first book.
Yes.
Just being
So
able to
only
put the
what
pieces together
You
now.
as a first reader would have already heard.
Right. Agenor has here identified that Rand is the one Baalzaman has been seeking.
But Alzaman, the dream guy, flaming eye, mouth face.
Yeah, so no more doubts there. At the last dream that had happened, he knew these three boys and he was getting close, but no.
Rand's the one he's
This is the
looking
one. Baalzaman's plan is for Rand to be brought to Sheol Ghul,
alive.
Sheol, sorry. And in some way be turned to serve the shadow. And in fact, be made one who the Forsaken will be sharing power with and even be led by.
As bending the knee.
Mm-hmm. And Agenor...
He doesn't like that.
Nah, he doesn't care for Baalsmann's plan. He has his own agenda.
Yeah. Let's kill Rand, and that'll work.
That'll be just fine. So, die time. Rand is trapped, and he can't take his eyes off of Agenor. He's just... But he's frantically thinking, I need to get away. I gotta find a way to get away, away. And then suddenly, he's able to see something that somehow he knows isn't actually visible to the eye, but nevertheless...
He can see it.
Yeah. A glowing rope or cord is running off from Agenor, from behind him, pulsing with something white, like liquid sunlight. He can't see where it's coming from, but with each pulse through it, the Forsaken is growing obviously stronger
and
healthier.
Physically, even. This guy who was skin wrapped on bone is starting to get that more fleshy, realistic appearance again.
And as this continues, he actually is getting to look vibrant and strong, like in the prime of his life. As Rand senses that shining cord, it commands his attention. Now he's drawn to it. It calls to him. And one finger of the cord actually breaks away from what's going into Agenor and reaches out and goes to Rand. And as soon as it touches Rand, the gasp, and he feels the light fill him, and it warms him, and it begins to thicken. This little finger gets thicker and thicker and thicker.
There's more of this power going into him now.
Yet even as that's happening, Rand is, I gotta get out of here. I gotta escape. I gotta get away. Agenor hasn't moved during this, and nor has Rand. But Agenor shouts, "You shall not have it! It is mine!" And a battle of wills begins.
Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot of active, I'm punching you in the face or anything like that, but rather a pulling on these cords.
Yeah.
This source of power as each tries to pull more than the other.
But it is a one-sided battle. Whatever this is, Agenor has obviously been using it to recover, to get his strength back, to be renewed, and now Rand is sucking more and more of it away. And as it's pouring into Rand, Agenor keeps yelling, "Mine! Mine!" Rand is feeling this warmth, and it's filling him. The light is filling him, a radiance, a bursting. But what's happening to Agenor during that? He's breaking out in a sweat. Then flames start shooting out of his mouth, out of his eyes, and he screams.
Ow.
And then Rand is away. You know, he wanted to be away.
He wanted to be,
away.
And now he is.
Inexplicably, suddenly, Rand is somewhere else. He feels full of this light and this warmth, and it's so overpowering he can't even think. Then he kind of tries to, shake this off a little bit and look around, and where is he?
He's standing in a broad mountain pass, and there's a big battle raging all around him. He sees armored men on horses slashing and stabbing at Trollocs and Fades, and he can put together this is where the Shannarans are, Tarwin's Gap. Their desperate struggle with these shadow spawn as they raid into the rest of the world.
And just at that moment, really, the two groups pull back from each other. So he looks one way, and there's the remnants of the Shannaran forces. Mm-hmm. They have taken great losses. And he looks the other way, and there's this massive horde still of Trollocs, Fades, and even Drakkar up in the air above them. And it's clear the Shadow Spawn are preparing for one final charge, and
a massive push to
he looks at the Shannarans again. They're gearing up for this, but this is going to be it.
They're ready to die with honor.
Yeah, they don't have anything left. They're not retreating. They will not give up, but they're going to die. But then some of them see Rand. Now, they're far enough away that nobody's like, "Hey, Rand, what's up, dude?"
No,
not like that.
Apparently, he looks a little funky.
He appears... Well, this is something we'll learn about later.
Yeah, but, I mean, you said it. He's full of the light.
He is. He's very bright. So that apparently has a visible effect to others as well. So they can see him. And then he turns back to look at the Shadow Spawn, and they also notice him. That noticing cause an effect. First, the Drakkar up in the sky start zooming specifically at Rand. And as they do so, lightning bolts come striking down, burning each one out of the sky.
It's like an electric fly swatter.
Rand feels the terrible heat of this light. Those are cool, by the way.
They're very cool.
Yeah, the tennis racket ones.
I love the sound.
Nice. Okay. So Rand feels this terrible heat of the light, and he falls to the ground. And the heat actually seems to be a real thing in some way, because as he grasps tufts of grass on the ground, those actually burst into flame. But then the flame grows and spreads, and a wind whips up from behind him and blows this rising wall of fire that speeds away from Rand right at the Trolloc army, burning right into them as they begin screaming.
Rand's had enough. He's dealing with all this. It has to end.
And he punches the ground.
And the ground responds by rippling
out in a massive earthquake that causes basically the mountains on either side of this pass to come tumbling down, and the ground from below also erupting, and there's massive decimation of the Trolloc army. When everything finally clears, there's still a large force of shadow spawn.
But instead of it being like 1,000 to 1.
It was never 1,000 to 1.
No, but it was
10 to 1.
It was a lot.
Yeah. Now it's
2 to 1?
Yeah.
Maybe. The Shinarans are still outnumbered.
But
they have a fighting chance.
They're badass. That's right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I use the term right. So they got this. They're okay. And then when everything is settled, Rand shouts out, "The light blinds you, Baalzamon! This has to end!" And a response is heard. And in the text, it's in all caps. Now, this is not normal. You're not going to see this in this series much at all.
Mm-hmm.
But here we see it. It says, "It is not here. I will take no part. Only the chosen one can do what must be done if he will." What? What the heck is that about, in your opinion, Zach? And before you speculate, I want our listeners to understand, Robert Jordan never officially reveals in the series definitely what this is. So we do get to speculate. What do you think that is? What's that voice? What's going on?
Tiny spoiler warning. I will not divulge anything that is actually in the rest of the series. However, what I am about to say comes from an earlier hot take that I've had. This is one of the first moments I get to kind of talk about that.
I know where you're going.
This, I believe, is the Dark One speaking directly to Rand. But, in a sense, it's also the creator speaking directly to Rand. And I think it's both of them because they're one person. And there are a couple words and phrases here and there that I will use outside of recording to my dad to back this up a little bit more, because I can't say them without spoiling too much. But this is one of the first times we really see something kind of like this, and it has a feeling like it's a much more powerful being speaking down, something more Destiny-like. And
so I have two theories. One is that Zach is half right, and that this is the creator. But the theory I like better is that this is actually the pattern being personified.
Sentient? It's given a voice here. It's a sentient
for a
being
moment,
here.
because we know the pattern spins out to Varen whenever things have veered too far off and things have to be brought on course. But this is not just Ta'Veren. This is the guy. This is the one.
With you.
This is the champion of the light. This is the one. So the pattern actually speaks at this moment.
I disagree with you, and I wish I could say why without giving too much away.
Well, we leave it to you, our listeners, to puzzle out for yourself what you think this is. But what's the response? Rand, hearing this voice, says, "Where? Where?"
Because it said, "Not here."
And something like a doorway in the air above appears, with floating steps leading up to it. Just steps floating on air. And as he hears the Shinarans rallying to charge at the Shadow Spawn with cries of, "The light wills it!" Remember, we said they could see the light?
Yeah.
"The light wills it!" Rand walks up and into whatever this place is, and he's somewhere else again.
He took a great stairway to heaven. Maybe.
I don't think it's heaven, because it's all dark. He is surrounded by complete darkness.
Oops.
Except for these floating steps that are still hanging under his feet and leading him forward. He looks back, and that entrance he just came through is gone, but he can still see a glowing, pulsing cord feeding light into him.
It's thinner.
It is thinner, but it's still flowing. Rand climbs and climbs and climbs until he reaches a door. This is a very familiar door.
The entrance to the room in his dreams.
The room where he has faced Baalzamon again and again. He touches the door and it's blown to smithereens. He enters and finds that same normal chamber, and it's empty. It's just the normal stuff, including the mirror that he's seen again and again.
And he can see his face clearly.
Yes.
It's very clear, but Baalzamon knows who he is.
And then, as usually happens in the dream, Baalzamon just suddenly is there. They face each other. And Rand sees Baalzamon has a cord trailing behind him too.
But there are two big differences. One, it's black. Blacker than black.
That's
it's
the biggest difference.
Vanta black. You look into it and all light seems to fade away,
It's the opposite
be absorbed.
of light. Yes.
And two, it's a lot thicker than the one
very
trailing
thick
Rand
one.
right now.
Yeah. So there's that. And then they have a conversation.
Because all of their confrontations always have a conversation.
I think Balsman falls prey to the bad guy syndrome.
He wants to monologue.
Yeah, totally. So he talks here, and the conversation, mostly one-sided. Rand has little denials from time to time.
But we get another, hey, Rand's the one he's looking for.
And he says Rand has one choice here, that he can serve Baalzamon and be given incredible power, or he'll be the puppet of Tar Valon and be ground into dust.
Which, let's be real here, straight up black and white fallacy here. He's getting an either-or circumstance, but there's probably more than just two direct choices. But by narrowing it down to these two choices, Baalzamon makes Rand feel like he has to choose one.
Then Baalzamon fills in some information gaps. He says, every time Rand has escaped the various shadow forces, the dark friends that were after him and stuff, it's all been by design. Everything has been him pulling the strings to get him right here, right now, to this place.
Oh yeah, he allowed the Aiel to get out of the Blight so that
Farderized mind.
Yeah, one could get a message to the Tinkers about the Eye of the World. He sent Jane Farstrider.
This is where we learn it's Jane Farstrider.
Yeah, to the Ogier with the same message there.
Now, where have we heard the name Jane Farstrider?
The Travels of Jane Farstrider, one of the few books that Rand has with his dad.
And where else? Last regular episode,
we learned that Jane Farstrider was one of the Malkieri heroes that kind of went in and arrested the bad one that then had trial by combat with Lan's dad.
But now we learn that he in some way had been caught by the Dark One's forces and was allowed to escape, thinking he was free when he shows up as that nearly dead person at an Ogier steading.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn Baalzamon intentionally sent that initial Trolloc attack to the Two Rivers as just a small little group of them because he didn't want to kill them. He wanted to get them moving, chase them from the Two Rivers, and force them into all these other things that have led all to finally being right here now. This has all been his master plan. Now, this does fit what we understand of Baalzamon, that he is this master planner. He's talked about all the things before in other dreams that he's done over the last 3,000 years, but now he's saying, microcosm, I've been doing it right here, right now with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then he conjures up 3 women.
1, 2, 3, count them.
Egwene,
Nynaeve,
and
Rand's mom.
Carrie Althor.
What a nice lady.
Rand denies this vision, and Egwene and Nynaeve fade away. But Carrie's still there, and Baalzamon says, she, at least, is mine to do with as I will. What the heck? What?
Rand's still denying it.
But she didn't disappear.
No, but, I mean, she's dead. She can't be gotten by him, right?
And that's what Rand thinks. But Carrie speaks up and says, the Lord of the Grave is stronger than he once was, and she is his. She begs Rand to help her, to free her. And then a really disturbing scene occurs where she is then surrounded and assaulted, tortured by multiple Fades.
This is an option for the show to either really go into this and be brutal or just kind of forget about the fact that this happens.
Rand does not take it well to see his mom being assaulted and perhaps ravished by Fades, who are
it's pretty
dirty,
disturbing,
dark, nasty creatures. And a sword of light appears in his hand as he screams his rage, and he raises this sword of light, and a fiery white bolt shoots out through the Fades, and they disappear in a blinding brightness. And Rand hears Carrie's voice, "Thank you, my son, the light, the blessed light." What do you think?
I like how in your notes you were...
Don't say that!
There are notes sitting here where he was going to ask me how I feel about this, and I see written down, "What do you think, Rand?" as he refers to me as Rand.
Oh, the magic of podcasting is being destroyed by my son, Rand.
Let's be real here. I'd rather be Matt than Rand. That's just me.
What do you think, Zach? Was what we just saw, was that real or was that illusion?
So on my first read, this is pure illusion. I firmly think it's just something that's conjured and manipulatable, but because it's manipulable, Rand then can somehow manipulate it as well. Later on, I develop thoughts and feelings that change and make me question that this might in some way be at least possibly real. But the reasons I can't really discuss except to say that the nature of dreams and the world in which they reside is a little funky.
Just based on what we've seen right here, just this conversation, I believe, of course, Nynaeve and Egwene was just fake. But I think Carrie was real, somehow. And the reason is when Rand gets rid of the Fades, she thanks him. And she says, the light, the blessed light. If this was a vision that Baalzamon had created, she wouldn't have said that. She just would have been gone too.
I have a thought in and with that allows it to go both ways depending on which of two things we kind of decide this is. Unfortunately, I don't think I can really talk about it until book 4.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he has Carrie L. Thor, that's spoiler-rich, so we can't talk about much as to what may or may not be happening.
But don't worry, when we eventually reach this part in books in a few months, I will make note and actually talk about this scene.
And your notes will say, "What do you think, Perrin?" Well, whatever it was, Baalzamon goes off at Rand for being a fool, using such power that he will destroy himself trying to do such things before Baalzamon teaches him how to do it properly. Rand simply responds, "It is ended," and swings the light sword. Lightsaber? Huh? Think about what he does. He swings this light sword at Baalzamon's black cord and severs it. I'm like, that is so a lightsaber now. Come on.
I mean, maybe, but I imagine it has a shape inspired by the sword that he was using, this curved blade.
And it probably doesn't go...
Yeah, but let's be real. Hayden Christensen didn't get told that it would do that in post, so he was doing it during his scenes the entire time, and it's one of my favorite anecdotes about Star Wars.
Yeah. So the cord is cut. He's not saving on his cable bill. It's a different kind of cord. Baalzamon, the reaction is that he screams, and he's flung across the room.
That was bad.
Some of the people listening is, what's cable?
Don't validate my doubt on that one.
Rand then points the sword right at Baalzamon's chest, and more light shoots out of the sword at him, and white fire consumes him as he screams.
Ow.
Rand keeps pouring the light into him, even as he senses the light that's flowing through his own cord is quickly dwindling.
Running out.
Baalzamon is withering under the fire, howling and shrieking, and then the last of Rand's light is gone, and Rand falls away through blackness, with Baalzamon's howl fading away. And then Rand is struck with something of tremendous force and the chapter ends.
Ouch.
And so does this episode. Does Rand survive?
Is Nynaeve alive?
What about Moraine?
Is Baalzamon dead?
Tune in next time to learn how this all wraps up.
Or at least to learn some of it.
And again, speaking of next time, if you happen to be listening to this the morning it dropped, remember, you can still get in on our Discord this afternoon, live recording of the final episode covering the Wheel of Time. That'll be
final episode covering The Eye of the World.
The Eye of the World.
We've still got 13 or 14 more books coming.
That's right. So, wrapping up The Eye of the World, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join us, normally only for patrons. This one is open to everybody. We'd love to have a good crowd as we really celebrate the end of a fantastic book. The invitation to our Discord server is again in the show notes. And even if you're listening much later on, that invitation is still there. Come be part of our Discord server.
Come talk to us there or hit us up through our social medias, Instagram,
Titter?
Instagram,
I don't have a Titter, man. I don't have a Titter.
Twitter. Facebook, hit us up directly through our Gmail.
fantasyfortheages@gmail.com.
There we go.
And our Patreon is there too if you want to support at a higher level and be able to be involved all the time.
Instead of just on special episodes like this wrap-up.
That's right. And the last thing we would ask is, if you're liking what you're hearing, tell other people about the podcast, share it with people who also like fantasy fiction like you do, and perhaps rate and review it wherever you download your podcasts.
Absolutely. This first book has been a lot of fun, and we plan to keep going for a long time, so.
Absolutely. All right, that's all I have then. You got anything else, Zach?
Nope.
We'll talk to you next time.